Yes. I think we should do this, Monte. We did Carmine Cop. You pick a roster. What's your choice of the next one?
Well, I think the obvious one is Fnatic, considering that we're talking to Fnatic's former coach.
My lord,
a team that picked up Trimby only to have Trimby actually play quite well for them, and honestly prop up Humanoid in sometimes absolutely ridiculous ways through Trimby's roaming, only to find himself mysteriously no longer on Fnatic.
Mate, this is like those memes where there's someone's face and it's like, you have no idea how bad it actually is. Like, holy shit, this is the roster. You know, this isn't like summer week 1, right, guys? Like, what are you doing? What is this roster run back? Like, this is mental to me. This is mental. I can't.
I was really hoping, this offseason, I said to myself, it would be cool if G2 ran this roster back, considering they fell down at the end, but were looking very strong for most of the year. But what my soul truly craves, Thorin, is another fucking year of Razork and Humanoid on the same roster together.
I will say, the reason why, I've alluded to it in the past, but I mainly just did it for Humanoid, because, look, I know Yamato's here, he likes him, but I don't like people who get paid fucking enormous money and then in the game away and don't give a shit. I actually, you know what? Despise people like that. Shout out Selfmade. Shout out all the other wankers like Reckless in the LEC. By the way, it's Selfmade. My pizza wasn't here under half an hour. It's free now. So, okay, right, what am I going to say? That I'll always be going up that guy's ass, mate. Don't even fucking worry about it. So what I will say is this. What people don't know is it's not just Humanoid. Humanoid and Razork have enormous contracts because, unfortunately, when they were signed, they were the shit. And now that we're in esports winter, it would be hard to offload those contracts anyway. There's nobody taking those contracts now, mate. That ain't happening.
Just make him a free agent.
No.
You could just make him a free agent.
It's Germany. That you literally can't. It's illegal in Germany.
Oh, really?
In Germany, normally, people don't even have end dates to their contract. And the only way you can fire someone, supposedly, because they have incredible labor laws, is you have to, repeatedly have, written warnings that they've not done tasks that are part of their job. And so for the LEC, I actually did a video this year about XL where I exposed this. XL tried to do what you're talking about. They thought they were an LCS team because they're from the UK. So even though their fucking CEO or whatever is German, it's that fucking Rijkaard guy. So what they tried to do was, when certain people, one of them might be on this roster, were benched, they just tried to go to them. This is why I despise team managers saying your family. You don't sell your own family into slavery, you fuck. Child Protective Services should come into your family, because these guys will go, they'll take you in a room with an arm around your shoulder and go, it's not working out for either of us here. It doesn't make sense. And plus, you don't want to sit on the bench. You want to be playing in the RLs, don't you, and get your game back. So anyway, if you just sign along this dotted line, then I'll just make sure that can happen. And what they're doing is you're just forfeiting all that contract. So if you have a banger 2-year contract in Germany, mate, one, as far as I know, it's not even legal, Monte, to have a bench salary. They put that in the contract. Don't worry about that. But it's not even legal. They have to. This is why Selfmade. And I'll tell you what, shout out to this guy. Alfari is the player with the most integrity I might have ever met in League of Legends. Alfari could have done this and sat for a year just collecting an enormous salary. And he actually chose, because he thought, well, I'm not playing, I don't deserve this one. He chose to give that up. People like Selfmade just sat streaming and delivering pizzas, metaphorically, and didn't do that. And so as a result, if you are someone who gets benched, you can just say, get a German lawyer. We want, essentially, you've got two choices. You either give me a deal, give me a settlement fee, maybe you buy me out my contract, you the org, or I'm just going to sit here and collect all the salaries. So yeah, that's the craziest thing, Monte. Fnatic is completely over a barrel with these players. No one will take them off their hands. They're in theory good, so you can get other players to join them, and then you just can't fire them in Germany. That's how bad Germany is. You can't fire serial inters.
Yeah, that explains why the LEC commissioner continues to be employed.
There you go. Probably is. He probably got his contract signed right there. And he was like, yeah, actually,
the delayed laugh from Yamato.
Exactly.
Oh man, I had to.
That was all side thing. That was all side thing there, Yamato. Let's get back into the actual thing. Let's talk about Fnatic then. What are your thoughts, former Fnatic coach, who will almost certainly play defense for the people in? Go on, give me your best shot.
I think the whole Trimby thing is strange, right? It's like the fact that Koi offloaded Trimby to then have to trade Trimby for Advienne. That's still like one of the worst deals
that is
of all time, you know.
Porn stars. It's like, right, I've got like Trimby. He's like bounce back season, probably going to be really good. Insane champion pool. Best I can do is add VN. Deal. What are you talking about? What are you doing?
Like, there has to be more to the story, right? And then now with Fnatic 2, it's like Fnatic needs to remember what the fuck happened in winter and spring, right? It's like if we look at their rosters and it's like the whole support situation that they went through, it was a tough one. Barring, of course, I don't know much about their new support. I've heard some good things about him, but I don't want to speak too much on him because I don't know much about the support, right? I think that Noah, after the first initial 9 games that he played in the regular season, I thought that he was quite underwhelming. I think a lot of AD struggled with the shift up and the change from Aphelios, Xayah into everything else. I think a lot of AD struggled with that. And I think
get out of here, Yamato. What changed was him. He was still playing Aphelios. The difference was he was just into flashing into 4 people. It was the same champion. He was just inting on it.
I think there's an argument to be made that Aphelios did get worse in the transition phase between a regular split and then coming into playoffs, because Aphelios was frankly just played a lot less. And then eventually they got to the point where like, yo, Noah just can only play Xayah. Everyone's perma-banning Xayah. Let's just fucking lock in Aphelios anyway. And I think those were still some of his better games, especially like the one at the Worlds where they won, right? Where he had like a pretty decent game. But generally speaking, I feel like Noah was quite underwhelming. I think that in some of the big games that they played in the BO5s, he, let's say, choked to some degree. I think he had some very, very like...
BL3s, yeah. The elimination game, yes. The one against BLG, right?
I guess there's some deaths that just aren't like acceptable, I would say. And then it's like the question then was, I heard some rumors that they wanted to pursue Karzi. And that was the idea of keeping Trimby and Karzi and then having them join the team. Because it seems like they wanted to separate Noah and Trimby, because that's how I interpret it from outside.
A humanoid Karzi link up where they were like the shot callers of Mad Light. So yeah, it makes sense. That would even be a good move.
And now they commit to a different support, because I think it seems like they knew they got to the point where they needed to commit with Noah, and they might have just wanted to separate the pairing Trimby and Noah, and that's why they went in the direction of getting a Korean support. I think as a core, from what I know, right, I think Oscarinin, he became better and better, and I think he's a very, very solid player. He had a rough start, and then the time that he was given, he definitely utilized that to be like a very, very good top laner, I'd say, in Europe. And I think Razork and Humanoid, I think there's definitely, fair criticism if you look at like the early parts of the year. But I think towards the end, I would say that, especially in summer when they had a more complete roster, I would say that Razork, if I isolate summer and then the playoffs too, I think Razork was the best performing jungler in Europe. I think at the World Championship too, he was really, really fucking good. And I think that Humanoid is a player that can compete. I think that if you have Humanoid on the server, at least you know that you have a player that can potentially compete against someone like Caps. He's going to have moments that will be disappointing, where he like face checks a bush for no reason, dies, and creates unnecessary volatility in the game, which is a very, very negative side. But at least you don't come into the game and knowing that you're going to start off on the back foot. And I think that mid lane is such a, intense role in that sense, where a lot of the mid laners that are coming up, that they have to face up against the elite of mid laners in Europe. And I think that the impact that a player like Caps has is something that players will always struggle to reach, even in a meta where mid lane is not super, super important, as we saw at the World Championship. So I think Fnatic still, I think they've maintained a very, very good core. I think that Razork and Humanoid, they are strong players, and I will defend them based over the fact of their gameplay, not based on my history. I will say that, but of course,
and also it's good for you.
How can I deny my bias?
For you, you should want them to stay together. You just fucking have the draft all day long. All their tendencies. No, guys, you can do it. I think you can make it, guys. Yeah, this is what they do. This is how Razork doesn't path towards him. Second, listen to what I'm saying here. He's going to step forwards when he has no flash. Don't worry about I bet you do fucking big him up. 2 things I had to say. One is, Monte, I have to ask you this. You're one of the only people in this call who can actually answer who John is, because he played for Guangdong Freaks. So can you give us some thoughts?
So Jun was a support player for Guangdong Freaks. And Guangdong Freaks this year was more or less it was a CV Max project team with a bunch of younger players outside of Dudu. And Jun was the support player for a lot of this year, but he was actually benched towards the end of of the year in favor of Andil. And so, look, the bot lane of that team was never really very good, honestly. And I'm not going to judge June because Taeyun was quite bad at times on Guangdong Freaks. But this was an experimental roster. But honestly, like, you know, if you watched a lot of the LCK, you were probably more impressed with Bulldog, their mid laner, than you were with a lot of the other rookies on this team. So it is, I will say, somewhat mysterious as to why they would go after June in particular. He's not very young, I don't think. He's like, I'll look it up real quick. He's 23. So I'm not sure if there's hidden untapped potential there at this point in time. It does, you know, seem a little bit strange that they would go after this guy in particular, a guy who was replaced on a roster that was already pretty underwhelming and certainly was not anything to write home about himself, right?
I think this is like, Noah, who do you think is good? I think June is good.
Maybe this is made or something, right?
Well, it's also like, who's cheap? Who's cheap, you know?
Yes.
Who's cheap that we can put together like, on this roster?
Pretty good, you know?
It's just weird because, you know, while these guys were playing in the Challengers League at the same time, they didn't play together because Noah's a product of the KT Challenger system and June is a product of the DRX and Guangdong Freaks. So maybe there is some other kind of relationship that I'm unaware of that they have. But this, I mean, the Guangdong Freaks were really pretty bad for a lot of this year, and even though some of their players showed growth, and like Dudu, I think, is like a criminally underrated player. And in fact, it was announced, I think, that Cuz is now going to Guangdong, so the Cuz-Dudu combo actually makes Guangdong probably a lot stronger than they would be otherwise. So I think next year, it might be fun to watch some of the Guangdong games if we still ignore their bot lane. This is going to be, I think it's definitely a project that they're going to have to work on here on Fnatic.
Monte, did you know why Dudu actually tried to sue the jungler for Excel, Peach, over copyright infringement? Because he heard everyone in the West calls him Dudu. Listen, I'm here all week. Listen, that's fresh. No one's heard that one before.
I mean, the reciting of Peach is mysterious to me. That one is another.
I don't know. Whatever on that one. Don't worry about that one. Don't worry about that one. Again, the joke is, this is, you can always use this lens now, guys. Every time there's a signing where it's like, why is he still? Oh, cheap. Yeah, cheap. Okay, right. They probably just take his hero off every time. Yes. You know, like there you go.
The question you guys should be asking in esports winter.
Excel to play. Maybe he's rich as me. He's just paying the Excel to play. Like, listen, can I get in for 50K a season? Yeah, whatever. Just come on in.
Yeah. The question in esports winter, guys, is who will take the $75,000 league minimum payment that you are being offered?
Also, remember, you also can't fire him. So. Good job again if you've done bad signings. It's Germany. It's Germany, baby. It's Germany, Monty. Germany again. Germany. And I thought Kaiser was the worst thing Germany had done in the last few years.
I think Kaiser's so good.
Because you know what? Do you know what's crazy, Monty? This just shows you how history repeats. Because basically, in the early 20th century, a Kaiser fucked everything up for Europe. And then in the early 21st century, a Kaiser also fucked everything up for Europe. Remember the Mad Lions runs at World? Anyway, you get the joke. So the joke's there, the joke's gone. Let's talk about this team then. Come on. Should we get into Excel? Should we do that? We're still doing Fnatic, aren't we? No, we don't. There's nothing more for that. By the way, I don't have big thoughts on this team. I actually just think this team will be like a lower mid-table team. I think they will be like 6th or 7th. I don't really care. I don't think there's a lot of upside personally. Obviously, the one hope is if Razork and Humanoid Smurf, you could do something. I think that's about it. And spoiler, we've just had a discussion. Like, has that ever happened? It even feels like the joke with those two is it almost felt like they never had a good game together. It's like one of them popped off and then the other one popped off the next time. So I've never seen two players that were good have more anti-synergy than those players. To see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, you know, be a pleb and don't.